Okay. Well, here goes nothing. Hello. Welcome to the Little Fish Stitches podcast. My name is Megan. I am your host for this podcast. I am coming to you today, Sunday, July 30th. Sorry, dog distraction already. Sunday, July 30th, 2017, from my backyard, where the untamed jungle is behind me. I live on the coast of Washington State in a small town called Aberdeen. I live here with my husband of 17 years. His name is Brian, and our two boys, James and Connor, and our dog, Bella, which was the source of the dog distraction just a moment ago. Let's see here. Just wanted to say thank you if you are a returning viewer. Thank you for joining me again. I really enjoy doing this, and so I'm glad that there's people out there that enjoy watching what I put out there. And if this is your first time, excuse me, itchy nose. If this is your first time, I just want to say thank you for joining me, and please don't be scared. I'm a little bit scatterbrained. I try very hard to not be scatterbrained, but I am not the most eloquent person, and I am fairly forgetful. So I try to write very detailed notes, and usually that helps me out, but at the same time, I still get scatterbrained. It's very breezy out here today, so I'm hoping that's not going to be an issue. And I keep slouching. Yes, so let me look at my notes here. I stuck off to the side. Okay, yes, where to find me. Sorry, some neighbor is doing there's a house being built a couple spaces down from me. And I don't know why they're out there building on a Sunday afternoon, but I guess you gotta make hay while the sun shines. Anyway, so places to find me. I can be found on Ravelry as Little Fish Stitches minus the E in Stitches, because my name's too long. And you can also find me on Instagram as Little Fish Stitches, on Facebook as Little Fish Stitches, and what else? Etsy. Yeah, I have an Etsy shop. I will just put the link at the bottom of the screen here because it doesn't match my usernames elsewhere. I did want to say I'm going to try to be more active. I do have a group for this podcast. It's the Little Fish Stitches podcast group, and as far as I know at this point, there's only one other person in the group besides myself. And that's a good portion my fault because I have not been very active on there. But in relation to a couple announcements I'm going to do here, I do want to be more active in my Ravelry group. First is I mentioned last week that I was thinking about possibly doing a knit-along. Well, I've been thinking a little harder about it, and I kind of think I want to do one. Mostly because I want to knit a specific item, and it would be fun to have some other people knitting along with me. And so I still have some details, I think, to work out. I think there's already a couple other people via my virtual knit night that I am part of that are interested in doing this same item. I think. No, I know because they 100% enabled me earlier on Thursday to purchase a certain item. Yeah. Which I will explain more in detail in my acquisitions section. And then the other announcement that I want to do is I'm about halfway right now to 100 subscribers on my YouTube channel. Thank you, all of you subscribers. I want to, when I get to that 100 subscriber mark, I want to do a giveaway. So I need to have something going. I'm probably going to start a thread in my group on Ravelry for that giveaway. Now, I don't have 100% nailed down what it is I'm going to do, but I do plan on giving away some yarn that I have dyed myself, and probably some other, maybe a project bag that I have sewn, and you know, a few other little fun bits and pieces. So that is all for, sorry, a text just came through on my phone. I'm glad I have it on mute. Yes, okay. So, I believe that's it for announcements. So, knit along, look for one in the near future, and giveaway when we hit 100 subscribers on YouTube. So, alright, next up, I have a finished object for you. Let me pull it out of my basket of goodies here. These, I started these in January. It tells you how dedicated I am to knitting socks. Yeah, I got sock blockers here. I was visiting my very dear friend Hillary. She's my best friend in the whole wide world. And she lives, it's about a 3-hour drive away from me at this point in time. She needs to get her butt back to Aberdeen, but that's another story. She used to live here. Notebook, blowing pages, lovely. Okay, anyway, so I was up visiting my friend Hillary in January. She had broken her ankle, foot, something. Anyway, she was immobile. She needed some company. I went and visited her. So when I was up there, I needed a mindless type of knitting project because I knew I would get distracted and mess up what it was I was working on at that point. So I decided to start a pair of socks and I did these socks 2 at a time, toe up, afterthought, heel, true afterthought heels. So these are my socks. Woohoo! And they're actually Hillary's socks. I'm going to send them off to her. These are much more Hillary colors than they are Megan colors. So, what I did was I started with Judy's Magic Cast On. I did not use a pattern at all for these. So I started with Judy's Magic Cast On. And I believe I had about 16 stitches on the needle at that point. And on each needle per sock side. You guys know what I'm talking about if you've ever knit socks. And then I increased to, I want to say 64 stitches. And then I knit a big long tube basically until I decided they were long enough. And I did a 1x1 rib with Jenny's super stretchy bind off. And then I went back in, and now I'm not pleased with how the heels turned out. They're just kind of, I'm terrible at the Kitchener stitch. I have practiced it, I have done it, and I still am terrible at it. I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. I need a better tutorial on it or something. But anyway, so basically what I did is I went in and I cut a single stitch in the middle of the back of the sock, and after I had picked up stitches on either side of that row, and I undid all but the stitches that were, I left the stitches in right here. No, yeah, I am not explaining this very well. After I put my needles in to pick up my stitches on either side and snipped the yarn, then I undid that. I unwove that yarn from the row, and but I left the last stitch on either end in so that I wouldn't get the little hole that happens right here when you make socks. So mostly I'm pleased with them, but the heel closure right here that should be Kitchenered nicely is not Kitchenered nicely because I'm terrible. So that is my one and only finished object this week. Moving on to works in progress. First one will be my Earnest cardigan. Now this is my oldest work in progress. I started this late February. I was thinking I had started it in March, but I looked back at my Ravelry project page, and I realized it was February 21st or something like that. So it's living in my That Crafty Little Fox Loveliness bag. I love this bag, and this handle leather, it's amazing. So it's living in this bag, and it's coming along. I have finished the body entirely. I believe that was the same as last week. But now I have most of a sleeve. Aha! So, let's see here. Where'd it go? Right here. See this little, this one right here, that's where I was last week when I did my podcast. And I'm aware I am a day late doing my podcast. I normally podcast on Saturday, and today is Sunday. But I haven't worked on this today. I have worked on it a lot this week. So, I'm thinking, let's see here. I'm just going to slip my arm into there. Get it up. Where it is. So right now I'm at about a 3/4 sleeve. So I've got maybe, I think I want to get about another 5 or 6 inches in, including the cuff probably. I know some people say they have really long arms, and they need to knit, the words are not coming. You need to knit longer sleeves. My problem is I usually end up with sleeves that are like dangling past my fingertips because I'm a short person. So I will make this fit me. Now, if you're wondering what all these stitch markers on here are for, I marked my decreases because I didn't want to get lost. So that's what that's about. So I'm making some decent progress on that. I still need to keep at it because I've got plans, but I want to finish this in order to get the needles free. Literally, I need these needles. So, so that is whip number 1. Whip number 2 is my son's blanket that I had been neglecting for a couple of weeks. Well, oh dear, I have to pause. Hang on. Okay. I thought that was somebody else. I'm expecting somebody to show up around 4 o'clock. It's only 3:10. That was my mother-in-law dropping my children off. Anyway, okay, back to this. So last week when I showed it to you, I had about that maybe an inch of the gray done. So I managed to do what I want to do every week until it's finished, and that is get 2 full skeins in. See, I got 2 full skeins plus 1 row of the next color. So I am making progress. I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm starting on the 10th skein of yarn for this thing. And I still have maybe that many, maybe slightly less than that, at my knitting station inside, waiting to go into the blanket. So that is whip number 2. Whip number 3. Living in my little lemon bag that I made myself with my nice little logo here. This is going to look really familiar. This, ladies and gentlemen, is another Soul Sister tank. Yes, and I'm going to stand up here and hopefully not look too goofy. I am wearing, oh, my neighbor let her dog out. I am wearing my Soul Sister tank right now. And, so, I posted a picture of this on Instagram and Facebook. And somebody said, hey, will you make me one, please? And I said, well, I have some yarn left over. If you buy more, then sure, I suppose, because it was a super fast knit. So, on the one I'm wearing, I decided to follow the directions as closely as possible. And I knit the 2 pieces as directed. This one I'm going to be knitting, as you might have seen, I am knitting in the round. While I didn't have an issue with seaming up the sides, I would rather knit in the round and not have to deal with these lumpy seams. I mean, it's not that hard to put stuff on, put stitches on waste yarn or spare cable and knit the front once you get to that point where you need to do the front shoulder pieces and the back. I mean, it's not that hard. So that's what I'm going to do. And I kind of feel like it's going to save me some yarn. So the person I am knitting it for is exactly the same size as me. So it was super easy. I was like, I will just make you the same size I made myself. And the only thing about it, though, and I mentioned this last week on the podcast, was the crochet edging was a little wobbly when I was done with it, and I hadn't done anything to try to correct that at that point last week. So what I decided to do after the podcast last week, I took my blocking wires and I worked it through the points of the crochet after just getting just the crochet edging is damp because the rest of it had already been blocked. So I got the crochet edging damp, and then I wove my blocking wires just through the points of the crochet edging, and I hung it upside down and let it dry like that. My dog is a hound. She's totally a hound. She's over there in point pose. Anyway, sorry. Dog distraction. Yes. I think she's after a mole, maybe. She's looking very closely at a molehill. Yep, she's after a mole. She just dove for it. Okay. Seriously, now she's digging for it. Sorry, you guys, I am so distractible. I should not be outside because I get super distracted outside. Okay. I have, let's see, how many more? That's 1, 2, 3 works in progress. I have one more that I'm going to show you today, and this is a new cast on. Since I finished those socks, which were basically my travel, stuff in the purse, because it's small kind of project, I needed another one. So, I may have mentioned this before. My sister and I work together, and we only go out to our employer's home once a week. And she had some tire trouble, which meant for a couple months now she has not been able to drive. We normally switch off, taking turns driving, because it's a 45-minute drive from town. Bumblebee. And I am getting to the point here. So it's a 45-minute drive to town, to where our boss lives from town, and it takes me 10 minutes to get into town, so it's like basically an hour for me to drive from my home to my employer's house. And I usually meet my sister in town because she lives in town, and then one of us will drive from there. And so she finally was able to get her tire situation taken care of, and she has a vehicle again, and she's not stuck at home. She's very happy about that. So she drove us to work on Thursday. And so while she was driving, and this is living in my Mrs. Brown's bag, because it's nice and soft and squishes into my purse real easy, is my sockhead hat. Now, apparently you are supposed to use an entire skein of sock yarn. I'm not sure I'm actually going to do that. I'm just going to do what I really feel like doing. But since it's a free pattern, let's see, what is her name? Who designed it? I mean, it's a very, very simple pattern. Kelly McClure. Sockhead hat by Kelly McClure. I cast it on. I swear, I should not cast on anything while being the passenger in a car. I found so many mistakes in my cast on. I mean, you can't see them now, but I do the long tail cast on. That's what I know best. And I kept missing the yarn as I'm doing the cast on. So I had these 4 different spots where it kind of worked, but I ended up having 2 stitches where I would have had 1. I did that 4 times, so I had too many stitches. So as I went through and I'm setting up my knit 2 purl 2 ribbing, I had to knit a couple together here and there until I finally got it right. So anyway, so yeah, I've only worked on this. I would say this is maybe maximum 3 hours of work. And in case you're curious, the yarn I am using, oh my goodness, big bumblebee. The yarn I am using is the Lemonade Shop, and from the Lemonade Shop, and the colorway is called Toxic Oreo. And it's just a very natural base with lots of black speckles and then lots of bright multicolored speckles. So it's very fun. And this is something that I ordered quite a while ago, and it's a dye to order situation. So I was working on that in the car on Thursday, and then a little bit Thursday night at knit night, virtual knit night, and then today at church I was in the infant nursery where we had 1 infant in the nursery, and my sister and I we do nursery together too. My younger sister and I, we do a lot of things together apparently. So it was 1 infant. So she ended up holding this little baby, and this little baby boy, he fell asleep. So, and he slept most of the time that we were in there. So I, as usual, have my knitting in my purse. So I pulled the knitting out and I knit for an hour or so while the baby slept, and my sister and I chatted. So, and a couple other people came in with their littles, but didn't really need me to be taking care of them because they were there and taking care of their littles themselves. Alright, so that is it for my whips. Bella, you need to shush. Neighbor dog wandered. Okay, so I've probably mentioned before, I live on a corner lot. The street is this way. Then across the road is the neighbor's house. They have a dog, but no, she gets out and kind of wanders the neighborhood a little bit. And that's the dog that is in this yard behind me right now. And that's why Bella is making a fuss. So, this week, I got to do some dyeing, some yarn dyeing. I haven't done it in quite a while, and I think I mentioned this last week, because financially for me, I can't buy more yarn until I've sold some. So, I was dyeing, and this is, I was dying to do some dyeing. Oh, I want to dye some yarn. So, I finally gave in. I do have this, and I've showed it on a couple podcasts ago, the Baby Llama Glow yarn. It says it's a worsted weight. It seems like a very light worsted to me. That's not the yarn I dyed, although I did take a 2-yard section of one of those skeins and test dye, and then promptly lost that 2-yard section. I have no idea where it is, otherwise you would be seeing it right now. I'm a little irritated about that, but I dyed up. I did a couple. Oh, please tell me I put the other one in here. Oh, yes, I did. Okay, so I did 2 skeins of yarn on Friday afternoon. And I am going to be using both of these. Not necessarily these specific ones, but both of these for future projects. Now, this one is on a 100% merino wool worsted base. And you can see that there's gray throughout this tealy turquoise color. That was made using black. I just speckled black on top of this immersion dyed blue. And I really like how it turned out on this. But because this is 100% wool, there's no nylon in it, it takes the dye a little differently. So I was happy with this, and I'm like, okay, I really like this. I think I'm going to do my sweater's quantity of DK in this. And I knew that it would be a little bit different than the DK has nylon in it. So, the base that I have. Ugh, sorry, I'm sitting on bricks, and they're not very comfortable. So I did this one. And then the other one that I did on Friday afternoon is this purple. And I used a good amount of gray in with this purple because I wanted it to be more of a grayish purple. I think I overdid the purple a little bit. I'm thinking I may adjust. Sorry, the dog is up. Bella, stop! Dog is being very barky right now because there's people she can't get at and she wants to go say hello, or dogs, something. So I'm happy with how this turned out, but I think I'm going to use a less purple and more gray or black in here because I want it to be grapple. That's what I want it to be. So I like this, and this is DK. This is my 75% merino, 25% nylon DK weight. And then, since I decided I liked this one for my sweater quantity, I dyed up this. Now the neighbor's out talking to Bella. I'm going to pause here. Hang on. My neighbor gives my dog treats all the time. So she makes a big fuss. Okay, now my doggy has a treat. She'll calm down. Alright, so back to this. This is how the DK dyed up. And I really like this. And I'm going to be knitting a certain sweater, which is going to be... Sorry. Now I'm being distracted by yarn. I'm going to be doing this sweater that is probably going to be the focus of the knit along. So, last night, I took a skein of this yarn after it had dried, which I put it outside on the line to dry, which I've not ever done that before, and I'm glad I did because it dried super fast. So here it is caked up. And this one had a little bit more in the black speckles department than the rest of them. So this might be a little bit more speckly than the rest of it's going to be, but this is my swatch. I think it worked up quite nicely. And this is going to make a very nice sweater. Something just fell in my hair from the tree. Lovely. Yes. I'm sitting in the shade of my apple tree right now. And my neighbor's right behind me. And she just told me she watches the podcast. So, hi, neighbor. So, okay. I must consult my notes again. Alright, yes. So, I decided to name this Shark Week. Can you see why? I don't know if you guys watch Shark Week on the Discovery Channel. Bella! She's burying the tree. You goofy dog, you. In a molehill, of course. Do you just go bury all those treats and then... Really? Now she's sitting here right beside me. Goofball dog. Anyway. So, if you watch Shark Week on the Discovery Channel, which happened to have ended yesterday, and my husband and Connor are obsessed with Shark Week. It's like their favorite week out of the entire summer. It looks to me like when you see those shots they get from the bottom of the ocean looking up to all the sharks swimming around above them. That's what this color reminds me of. So that's why it's called Shark Week. And the fact that I created it during Shark Week is just kind of a plus. So that's that. Okay, so that's it for my works in progress / dyeing yarn. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I like to call pod stocking. I feel like I've watched a ton of podcasts this week, and I had to sit there and go through my list of subscribed podcasts in order to remember which ones I watched this week, because I watched so many. And I'm only going to mention 3 of the at least 7 or 8 different podcasts I watched this week. It's like every day I picked a different podcast, and I've been watching a lot because I've been working a lot. So I caught up on a couple of my favorites that as soon as these 2 put out an episode, I watch it. And one is the Stranded podcast, and the host of that podcast, her name is Amy, and she lives in the UK, and I have mentioned her before on the podcast. I think she was one of my first pod stalking subjects. So I watched... Well, I think I actually had 2 of her episodes to catch up on. So I watched her, and then I watched Emily of Down the Hobbit Hole. Hi, Emily. I know she watches my podcast occasionally, too. And because we are Instagram friends. So I watched her most recent episode, which I always enjoy. She's in Tennessee, and she dyes yarn as well and fiber, and she spins and does fun stuff and has chickens, and you see a lot of the chickens on her podcast. And she's got a couple of a cat and a dog, and they make regular appearances as well. But anyway, her podcast is just fun. One of my favorites that I like to catch up on. And then the other one that was new to me this week was, and I kind of watch as I watch new podcasts, those podcasters recommend other podcasts as well, just like I like to do. And so I jot them down somewhere usually, since I will never remember if I don't. And one that kept coming up was called Tiny Paper Foxes. So I looked that one up, and I'm like, it's not there. But it did eventually direct me to Handmade and Woolen. So it used to be Tiny Paper Foxes. They changed their name to Handmade and Woolen. And this is young lady in New York City, the Bronx, I think. I don't know. I'm not from there. I don't know all the different areas around there. Anyway, she's in that area, and she and her husband, mostly it's her knitting, and her husband is a photographer, and so he comes on and does a photography segment that's I find pretty interesting. I like that part. So what I do, as I've mentioned before, is when I start a podcast, I start at episode 1. So I started with episode 1 of this podcast, and right from the get-go, this one is very well produced. I think it's because of Jenny's husband, whose name I cannot recall at the moment. It's very well set up. Everything is, the background is so clean and not distracting at all, and the audio is good, and the content is interesting, so it was a good one to watch. So I definitely recommend what is now called Handmade and Woolen. Handmade and Woolen. I need to work on my pronunciation because I like to blur things together, apparently. So that's it for pod stocking today. Let's see here. Now I gotta, because again, I've done this thing where I have an acquisition to show you, and I have not pulled up what I want to show you because it's a pattern on Ravelry. This is the sweater that I've been talking about for my possible knit along. I'm trying to pull up the best photo for this, and this is the Campside Pullover by Alicia Plummer. You're getting lovely reflections of my house. Let's see if I can do this without, and the swing set. This is not working. Yeah, look at that. You can see my camera. You can't. Okay, so sorry, that's not going to work. There's too much glare on my screen. So, Campside Pullover. Maybe I will learn how to insert a photo here. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see, huh? So, that is my only acquisition this week, other than, I don't know if you can really call this yarn an acquisition because I already had the yarn. I just had to dye the yarn, but I dyed up enough for a sweater's quantity to make the Campside Pullover, and then promptly sold half of it. I mean, that's a good thing for my Etsy shop, yes, but at the same time I'm like, well, I can get started on the sweater and then I have to dye some more yarn. Oh well, that's the reason part of the reason I like being an indie dyer is I can choose my own color, but then I can sell it if I want to and make more. So yeah, so there's that. Okay, So that's like I said, my only acquisition. I have more coming next week. I know for sure. I will have lots of acquisitions probably next week. One thing I was supposed to mention in the announcements at the beginning of next week, or at the beginning of this episode, next week, I will not be doing my podcast at my normal time or my normal day. I know I'm a day late this week, but next week I will be probably a couple days late. I'm going to try to do a midweek episode, or I may even just, if life gets too busy, I may just wait until the following weekend, because, and this leads into life stuff, which is, this past week has been very, 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 very busy with work. I have worked a lot of hours this past week, and I have a lot more to do. It's like all of a sudden we're out of stock on everything on Amazon, and I have to work really hard to get everything restocked. So that's been going on. And if you're interested in what I make as a professional sewer, lifeandlimgel.com. So, yes. And I will put that on the screen, just because I love my job. So, buy more stuff so I have a job. Okay. And then, as part of the reason I was so very busy is Sunday and Monday I was camping. I mentioned my friend Hillary near the beginning of the episode. She and I went up with our children to La Push, Washington, which is near Forks, Washington, which, if you've ever read any of the Twilight books, you know about these tiny little towns in the middle of nowhere. They're really not very exciting. And they do have a couple of Twilight-themed stores and stops you could make, but it's not really my thing. I read the books because they were based in Washington. And I was living with my in-laws at the time before we bought the house we're living in. So that was quite a while ago, like 7 years ago, 8 years ago now, I read them. And my sister-in-law happened to have them, so I borrowed them from her and read them all. But anyway, we were up there where those books are set. And it was bright and sunny, and I'm sure it's not that way in the winter, but because it is Washington. But we just spent one night up there. We stayed at the Mora campground, M-O-R-A, Mora. There were 3 tents on our little campsite, and Hillary and her girls stayed in one tent. Me and Connor stayed in another, and Jamie and his buddy Aiden, who's Hillary's only son, stayed in their own little tent. So, and they've been friends since Aiden's birth, basically. They were forced to be friends. But anyway, so we went out to Rialto Beach, which is near Mora Campground, and on day 1. And then we went out to, after we packed up camp and loaded up our cars and left Mora Campground because we had to be out by 11 a.m., we went out to Beach 1 on the Quileute Reservation in La Push. And I will be putting a little bit of video from several beaches in Washington so that you can see what Washington coastal beaches are like, because they are seriously the most beautiful place on earth, in my opinion. Not that I've traveled a lot, but It's gorgeous here. Not every beach is like this in Washington. I mean, like if you go to Ocean Shores, there's your average sand dunes with long wavy grasses and then lots of sand beach thing. But if you go further north, the further north you go, the more amazing, rocky, crazy, awesome beaches you get. At the end of the video, there will be a clip of Ruby Beach, which is just north of Claylock, and I will put the Claylock is how you pronounce it. I will put the spelling on the screen for you because it's not anything like it sounds, at least not what you would think anyway. And then, so I took a little video at Ruby Beach because I don't go by Ruby Beach and not stop at least once. If I'm like, on the way there, I stopped. On the way home, I didn't stop. It was late. I was tired. And we'd been at the beach all day. So there will be some video from Rialto Beach, and there will be some video from Beach 1 in Quileute, or La Push, on the Quileute Reservation. But we had a great time. I mean, the kids played in the sand for 5 hours at Quileute, La Push, Beach 1. And, I mean, they just played, and they played, and they played, and they played, and they played some more, and then they played some more, and we fed them, and they played some more. It was great. I mean, everybody was happy. I mean, there was very little whining about not having electronics, because we banned electronics outside of vehicles on this trip. So that was a good way to unplug the kids and let them just be kids, you know, not play video games, that kind of thing. And then, so I had a great weekend last weekend. And I actually slept okay considering I camped. I kind of glamp when I camp though. I have a 4-inch memory foam mattress topper on a cot. That's what I sleep on. So I'm a little bit of a glamper. Woo, beef. So that was fun. Monday night we got home around 8:30. Made everybody shower. Realized how terrible a mother I was when I realized everybody was horribly sunburnt. Sunscreen. Use it, people, please. Because, I mean, my nose, it's kind of hard to tell on the camera here, but it's still pretty red. And it's peeling. And you should have seen my forehead yesterday. I was, like, super flaky. Like, I had peeled a massive amount. And then I burned the tops of my feet. And I still can't scratch them because they still hurt. Very sensitive. So yes, use sunscreen. My teenage son looked like a lobster because he didn't wear his shirt half the day. So, yeah, there's another neighborhood dog and Bella's gonna fuss. Yeah, so that was a good weekend. And then, this week, like I said, work has been insane. And I specifically took Monday off. And then for camping, which normally I would be working at my church, just answering phones. I finally have decided, as much as I like having that little bit of extra income, even though it's just minimum wage, 1 day a week, that it is time, and I have already informed the appropriate people, it is time for me to step back from that job. I am too busy. I have too much work with my main job, and with my life, and with trying to run a small business as well as work a regular business and be a mother and a wife, and it's too much. It's 1 day a week and it's too much. So, excuse me. Yeah. So I've let my pastor know, and I will be very busily working on my job with Life and Limb Gel and my own personal endeavors of yarn dyeing, and hopefully I'm going to get back into pattern designing. I kind of had to step away from it for a while because it just was driving me crazy. Couldn't figure something out. I need to get back to it. So, well, okay. I'm trying to think, is there anything else? Oh yes, more camping. I'm going camping leaving on Thursday. That's why my podcast next week is going to be late. This time I'm camping down in Oregon, and it's supposed to be ridiculously hot later this week, like into the hundreds, starting about Wednesday, I think, and we're leaving Thursday. I'm hoping it doesn't stay too hot. So I think it's supposed to cool down starting on Thursday, maybe Friday, can't remember. Anyway, this is going to be a fun camping trip. It's our annual family camping trip. My aunt, who lives in Oregon, is going to be there with her 2 kids who are teenagers. My parents, my sister is going for the first time in 3 years. My younger sister. My brother and his family, my older sister and her family. I'm not sure who else is going to be there, but yeah. We try to make a family camping trip every year, usually in Oregon, because the aunt that I mentioned, her kids are adopted from the foster system in Oregon, and part of being an adoptive parent to foster system children is that she gets to have very low camping fees. So we try to always do a camping trip in Oregon every summer for like the past, sorry, I keep getting distracted by birds, I'm sorry, for I would say the past 5 or 6 years now. We used to have a camping space here, very local. There is a private campground called the Wainuchi Wildwood, and my grandparents had a space out there, and then my grandmother passed away while I was pregnant with my youngest, Connor, and we held on to it for a little while as a family, helping my grandpa pay the annual dues that are part of that package there. But it was just getting to be too much because the fees were pretty high, and so we had to let that go. So camping became a state park situation. But anyway, I feel like I have rambled on forever now, and I am expecting somebody to show up at my house in the near future. Like I said, 4 o'clock, and that's 9 minutes away now. So I need to go and clean up my little spot here where I'm sitting and put things away so I can be prepared for those people showing up, because they have another sewing job for me, and I hope they don't need it super fast, because this week it is not going to happen. So I have to. So I mean, like I have yet to have a day off since I came home. Since I got back to work on Tuesday last week, I worked every single day. Even today, yeah, before church this morning, I went upstairs and sewed for an hour and a half. Yeah. That's my life right now. Sew, and then sew, and then sew some more, and yeah, then get out your sewing machine and sew some more. So, oh my gosh, ridiculous. Alrighty, well, now that I have rambled and rambled some more and then rambled again, I will bid you farewell. I am going to go get ready and edit my podcast hopefully before the end of the night and get it uploading so it'll be going live tomorrow morning. Not that you would know that because it's all back end stuff. Okay. I'm losing it. I better say goodbye. Goodbye. Have a good week. Knit lots. Have fun in the summertime sunshine. And if you live in Western Washington, don't die of heat this week. All right. Bye. Woo.